Today we're going to talk about praying, but not just praying and asking God for stuff, but how to love actually waiting on God in prayer. Now, that may sound like a crazy idea. I mean, we're not typically very patient, and so the idea of waiting for anything is a bit frustrating. But when it comes to prayer, it's actually a required skill. We need to learn how to wait for God, to wait for answers, to wait in His presence, and not just do it, but to enjoy it, so that it's not a drudgery and it's not something that we are begrudging. So, you see, prayer is critical to the long game, as I'll call it today. The long game. What do I mean? Well, life lasts a really long time. You're going to be here a number of years, 70, 80, maybe 90 years. You will be involved in this life. And in that time, there are going to be many trials. Peter said, "Dear friends, don't be surprised at the fiery trials you are going through." As the old line says, if I'd known I was going to live this long, I would have taken better care of myself. Well, you're going to be here a while. So learn to pray. Because you and I, we both need God and we need His help. So we need to learn to pray. It's critical to the long game that we're involved in. The psalmist David said it this way: "I waited patiently for the Lord to help me, and He turned to me and heard my cry. He lifted me out of the pit of despair, out of the mud and the mire. He set my feet on the solid ground and steadied me as I walked along." The fact is, we need God's help in this life. We cannot do this on our own. You can tell yourself that. You can imagine that you're strong enough. But we need more than we have. We need more than anyone that we know has. We need God's help in this life if we're going to make it through this long journey of life. He's given me a new song to sing, a hymn of praise to our God. Many will see what He has done and be amazed. They will put their trust in the Lord. Oh, the joys of those who trust the Lord, who have no confidence in the proud or in those who worship idols. Another reason we need prayer is because we need joy in life that can only come from God a lot more than we need happiness. Most days we find ourselves just chasing the happy. What would make me happy right now? Would a coffee make me happy? Would a dessert make me happy? Would time with my spouse make me happy? Would a movie make me happy? A binge? Whatever. And it's the wrong question. We need to be asking ourselves, what would fill me with joy? What would fill my very being, everything I do, my thoughts? What would make my life joyful? And that only comes from God. And David knew that as he prayed to God and talked of this incident that we really don't know specifically the story behind it. In Psalm 40, as he spoke of this incident, he waited on God, and in that God gave him a new song, and God filled him with joy that came out of waiting on God. O Lord my God, you have performed many wonders for us. Your plans for us are too numerous to list. You have no equal. If I tried to recite all your wonderful deeds, I would never come to the end of them. You see, God has bigger plans for our lives than we do. God has a larger purpose in play. He has more for us to do than we can imagine. In fact, we have no idea what we're capable of, but He does. So, prayer is for this long life. It's for the whole thing, and we need connection with God through it. Also, prayer's just a good time. Now, I know that's something not many people can connect with, and I feel bad about that. I wish everyone could enjoy what it means to pray. And you can if you'll just learn and practice it. For example, there are things we get in prayer you can't get any other way. One thing we get is we get to see like God sees. I love the book of Revelation. It's confusing in some ways, but if you look at it as it's meant to be looked at, as a prophetic book that captures all of time and the plans of God, it's a wonderful joy to read, and it promises that you'll be blessed if you read the book of Revelation. Well, we get it because John was waiting in prayer. In Revelation 1, we find that he's worshiping God on the Lord's day. In other words, he's waiting on the Lord in prayer. Then as I looked, I saw a door standing open in heaven, and the same voice I heard before spoke to me like a trumpet blast. The voice said, "Come up here, and I will show you what must happen after this." You see, John was invited into God's throne room, mission control, and got to see things like God sees them. And that's what prayer will do. It will elevate your perspective. It will put you in mission control, and you'll be able to better comprehend what God is doing. Maybe not totally, but much more in your spirit. You'll at least come to terms with it. So prayer's fun because it helps us see like God sees. Another thing that prayer does for us is it helps us come to terms with today. I love the story of Elijah. Right after he'd won his greatest victory, he was at his lowest point. He was depressed because a wicked queen was trying to kill him. And so he whines to God about his situation, and God sends him to Mount Sinai, where the law was given. And there Elijah goes, and God asks Elijah what's going on, and Elijah's response is, well, I'm the only one who serves you, and I'm sad, and everyone wants to kill me, and wah, wah, wah. You know, like our prayer lives sound a lot of the time. Well, on that mountain, God showed up for Elijah, and God showed up in the strangest of ways. I mean, first there was a wind that hit the mountain that was so terrible it just tore the mountain apart. And then there was a fire that burned the mountain and a couple of other things. But in the end, there was a still small voice. And Elijah knew that God was in the voice. And when he stepped out to meet God and to listen to that still small voice, God said, hey, Elijah, you're not alone. There are 7,000 other people just like you who are faithful to me. And I've got a plan from this day forward of how we're going to remove the evil from your country. So God helped Elijah come to terms with his fear and his depression and showed him that there was hope for a future. And from that meeting with God, it leads us into our next reason that prayer can be fun and so such a good time is because not only does prayer help us see like God sees, not only does it help us come to terms with today, it also gives us hope for tomorrow. Because right after that mountain experience where Elijah met God, he ran and called Elisha as his disciple. And Elisha's story is amazing. On Elijah's last day, I know these names can get confusing, but on Elijah's last day, he's about to get a heavenly Uber that day. He's going to get caught up and taken to heaven. And all day long, he tries to get rid of Elisha. He tries to leave him in Bethel, tries to leave him in Gilgal, tries to leave him at the Jordan River. All the while, Elisha's like, nope, I'm with you to the bitter end. And after they cross the Jordan, Elijah asks Elisha, he says, what do you want, man? And Elisha's answer is, I want a double portion of what you have. I want to take what you've got and go twice as far with it and do twice as much with it. And Elijah responds, well, that's a big thing, but if you see me go, it's yours. And Elisha stuck it out. And he took a ministry. He took that double portion, which, by the way, is the gift to a firstborn son. So he was really asking to live like a son. He took that double portion and he took it far, blessed the nation of Israel, and lived a life not only of hope in himself, but giving hope to others. So yeah, prayer is a good time. It changes the way we see things, changes the way we understand the now, and gives us hope for tomorrow. So how can we make all this practical? Because I like things to be practical, and I hope you do too. Well, let's ask ourselves, how can I learn to enjoy waiting on God? So 3 little things I would recommend. First, set an appointment. You know what? Make this a priority in your life. Get an appointment set at this time, this day, this 10 minutes, this hour, this however long. I am going to wait on God. I'm going to go, I'm going to pray, I'm going to be quiet, I'm going to enjoy some silence and hear what my Father has to say. Why make an appointment? Because if you don't, you won't. That's why. Because this has to be a priority. And if it's not a priority, it will never happen. It will never move up the priority chain of your life. And you'll just live your life without prayer. And if you live your life without prayer, you're not going to understand and come to terms with what you're going through. You're not going to see things from God's perspective. And you're going to live with a lot of hopelessness. And you probably know all about that stuff because many are living without prayer at this moment. So make an appointment. Second thing, shut the door. What does that mean? Shut the door means, well, what Jesus said in Matthew 6. When you pray, go away by yourself, shut the door behind you, and pray to your Father in private. Then your Father who sees everything will reward you. Man, prayer is a time to focus. It's a time to get quiet. It's a time to shut down the noise. It's a time to get alone with God. So make the appointment and shut the door. Shut down the distractions and focus. And the last tip I have is stay there as long as you can. You know, when you first start praying, a minute can be tough. 5 minutes can be hard. But as you press into prayer, as you learn to enjoy waiting on God to do things, you're going to find out, one, that He does things, that He's always up to something and it's always good. That even though your circumstances may be harsh, your Father is good and doing good things in your life. And the more you pray, the more you're going to see those things. The more you're going to understand and enjoy those things. And so now, the more you do it, you're going to enter in anticipating that God's going to show up and God is doing things because you're praying. We need to relearn that as the church today, that God answers prayer, that God responds to prayer, and that when we pray, we are actually doing the greatest thing we can do. We're not just doing the only thing left to us. We're making a real difference in the supernatural because we're choosing to pray instead of do. Now, I'm not saying there aren't things we should do. I'm just saying we should pray first. So, this is some simple tips on how to enjoy waiting on God. You always know God's going to come through. You don't know how. As I like to say, God will always exceed your expectations, but very seldom meet them. And so that's what prayer does. It takes us to a new level. So I pray that you learn to enjoy praying today.